It is understandable that with the economy being what it is today, a lot of people are having great financial difficulty. A lot of people are behind in their debts and their bills, their car payments, their mortgage payments, their credit card payments, whatever other types of payments they have. That is due to loss of income, loss of job, loss of wages, or other factors. Many people exacerbate the situation by not handling it properly. And in this video, we're going to discuss a way that you can essentially borrow money regardless of your credit standing when you need it the most. Now, in order for this to work, you have to have some debt. You have to have a mortgage or credit card payments or some other debt that you're paying on a regular basis, some type of loan payment, whether it's a personal loan from a bank or a car payment or something like that. What happens with a lot of people is that they get into financial trouble and they use the money that they would have used to pay their car payment, their credit card payment, or their house payment. They use it for some other essential necessity, whether it's medical bills or food or travel or car repair or something necessary. And for that reason, because they've used that money for something else, they're not able to make their payments. And they get themselves into trouble and they mess up their credit. So the proper way to handle a situation like that is what we're going to be discussing today. I'm going to show you how you can borrow money today. You can literally do it today. If you have some payments coming up, whether it's a mortgage payment, a car note, credit card payments, furniture store, or maybe a department store payment that you have, I'm going to show you how to borrow the money that you otherwise would use to make those payments and not be considered as delinquent. Okay, so basically you're going to borrow the money from your creditors. If you have a house payment of whatever it might be, let's say $2,000 a month, okay, we'll say $1,000 a month or whatever it is, $600 a month, you're going to borrow that money. Instead of paying it to the mortgage company, you're going to use it for whatever you need to use it for. The same with your credit card payments. If you have a $200 a month credit card bill to pay, you're going to borrow that money. If you have a $400 car payment, you're going to borrow that as well. You can do this for 1 month, possibly 2, 3, or even up to 6. And I'm going to show you how to do it. And the way this works is there is a thing called a moratorium. A moratorium. So let's discuss what a moratorium is. We go to dictionary.com, definition of moratorium. A moratorium is a suspension
Moratorium.
A suspension of activity. A legally authorized period to delay payment of money due or the performance of some other legal obligation as in an emergency. An authorized period of delay or waiting. So we go to the uslegal.com legal definition. Moratorium refers to any suspension of activity, especially voluntary suspension of collections of debts by a private business, government, or under a court order. In bankruptcy law, it means a halt to the right to collect a debt. A moratorium may be imposed in times of economic crisis or a natural disaster like flood or earthquake to allow people to return to normal before having to worry about preventing foreclosures and the like. It is a suspension of activity until a future event or resolution of a matter. For example, states may pass a moratorium on imposing the death penalty until issues surrounding the death penalty can be resolved. So now we know what a moratorium is. So what you're going to do basically is contact each of your creditors, or possibly you can contact one. Maybe you just need, and you're trying to figure out how can you get the $400 you need for whatever you need it for and not be behind in your bills. And if you have a $400 car payment, what you would do is contact the lender that you're making the car payment to and tell them, basically, I need to borrow that $400 payment from you this month. And here's the deal. When you do a moratorium request, when you borrow money from a lender, all that means is you're not going to pay them and you're also not going to be considered late. You're going to keep the money and use it for what you need it for. And the good thing about it is, let's say you have 3 years left on your car payment. You're not going to borrow this $400 this month and then have to double up next month. They're going to take this month's $400 payment and tack it on to the end of the loan. Let's say you have literally 36 months to go. You're going to skip this month's payment. So now you're going to have 37 months to go instead of 36. So if your last payment was going to be in March, now your last payment is going to be in April. They're going to add that payment to the end of the loan. The only thing they're going to do is charge you interest for the month you don't pay. But even the interest you won't have to pay to the end of the loan. And if you ask them to, they may not even charge you interest. So let's look at how you make that request. The first thing you might want to do, and this is what I suggest, is you contact your lender by telephone. You contact them by telephone and you basically call them and you tell them. Now, in order for you to get a moratorium, you can't just arbitrarily do it. And you can't say, I need to not pay my $400 car payment or my $1,500 mortgage payment or $1,000 or whatever it is. I can't pay that this month because I want to go to the Bahamas and have a party. They don't care about that. It has to be what's called a financial hardship. A legitimate financial hardship. And they're going to want to know what it is. They're going to want, because they're going to be concerned, how often are you going to do this? Because they always care about your financial standing. Okay? Now you have to think about how much you want to disclose to them. Okay? Because of what may happen in the future. If you know it's a temporary situation, go ahead and tell them. I haven't been getting the overtime necessary on my job as I had in the past. So therefore, I've gotten behind in a few bills and I have to take care of some things. Or maybe you could tell them my car is broken down. And if I don't get it repaired, I can't go to work. Or I have a child that's sick and I have to pay a medical bill for an operation. Whatever your reason may be, it has to be something legitimate that could be described as a legitimate hardship. Okay? And you basically go to them and you make the request to be able to skip a payment. Now, when you call, you're going to be directed to the right person you need to speak to. And I'm not going to make this complicated because it's not complicated. I'm not going to give you an exact words. You basically, the essence of the way this works is that you have a financial hardship. And in order for you to maintain this loan and all your other loans, you're going to need a little bit of help. And all you're asking is that you be allowed to forego this current payment, to skip it, and pay it much later, and ask that they tack it on to the end of the loan. That's important. Don't say, I want to pay it 30 days late, and I don't want it to count against me as far as credit. That's not good enough. Tell them, I don't want to pay this month's payment at all, and I want to be able to pay this at the end of the loan period. I want you to tack this payment on to the end of the loan. Now, asking for a 30-day moratorium is easy, and most creditors will give it to you, whether it is a mortgage company, a bank, credit card payments, car payment, even furniture stores. I can't guarantee you they would do it, but I can tell you that most of them will do it most of the time, especially if it's 1 month. Now, it's possible to ask for more than 1 month, a moratorium. You could ask for up to 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. But you have to give them a reason. There has to be a reason you're asking to be able to skip these payments for this period of time. Now, one of the things you might want to consider doing in your language when you talk to them and when you send the necessary written request is mention that you're trying to avoid having to file bankruptcy. That will get their attention because they know, especially if it's an unsecured loan like a credit card, you file bankruptcy, they're not going to have any recourse. None. Okay? Well, let me take that back. They could have recourse. It really depends on what your situation is. Okay? But if you don't have the money, the bankruptcy debt can be discharged completely. Okay? Especially if you're filing the straight bankruptcy rather than a Chapter 13. Of course, in the case of a car, they could say, okay, if you're not going to be able to pay the car, then we'll just have to pick it up. They do have recourse. They can take the collateral for any collateralized loan, whether it's an automobile or a home. But the main thing is they're going to try to work with you. And if you're just asking for a month or even 2, and it's a financial hardship due to a job loss or a temporary loss of wages or loss of income due to being sick and not being able to go to work for the past month or 2 or something like that, or there's a decrease in overtime, or maybe you have a two breadwinners in the family and one of them has lost their job even though you still have yours, and they're going to be getting a job in the next whatever, and they've already got a promise for it. You just basically need a little bit of help. So let's look at a sample letter that you could write, because they're always going to request that you send them a letter. Now, this is not a form. In most cases, they don't have a form. They could have a form, but they may tell you, send us something in writing. They're going to ask you to mail it to them or fax it to them. So here's a sample moratorium request. Your name and address at the top, creditor's name and address, the date, and the account number. That's very important. Dear sir, madam, since making the above agreement with you, my circumstances have changed. I can no longer forward to the agreed payments because, and then you fill in whatever your hardship is. Because I have been unemployed for the past 3 weeks, but I do have a job offer, and I will begin work in next week. I will get my first paycheck 3 weeks after that, etc. Whatever your case may be. My spouse has been in the hospital, and we have extensive medical bills, and I have had to purchase medicine on their behalf, and that has made it difficult for you to maintain these payments. Whatever your situation may be, I shouldn't have to tell you, because we have a legitimate hardship. You go ahead and fill it in, but be descriptive. Give them full disclosure. Let them know, and most importantly, give them the assurance that it is temporary. Okay. And then it says here, I enclose a copy of my personal budget sheet, because they're probably going to ask for that. They may or may not. As you can see, after essential expenses and payments to priority creditors, I have no funds with which to repay my debt to you. I'm not too crazy about that particular language, priority creditors. This is a sample. I didn't write it, because you're basically saying they're more important than you. I can pay them, but I don't have the money left to pay you. That's not a good way of putting that. In these circumstances, I would like to ask you to withhold action on this account for 6 months. Whilst I realize that this is unsatisfactory, I feel it is the most practical course of action at this time. And what you might want to do is add something like, because I am trying to avoid having to resort to the remedy of bankruptcy, which has been suggested to me by an attorney that I spoke with, but I'd much rather work with my creditors if you're willing to work with me. You might want to add something like that. Then it says, I would also ask that you agree to suspend interest and charges on this account. Should my circumstances improve, I will contact you again. Your patience and cooperation in this matter is greatly appreciated. I look forward to your acceptance of this proposal. Yours faithfully, signed, your name. Okay, that's a sample letter that I found. Let's see. Is there another one? And like I said, it's up to you to basically make the request. And rather than complicate this, I'm just going to keep it simple. And the only information that you need to know is that a moratorium is possible. Whoever your creditors may be, contact them. They will direct you to the right person. And you don't have to necessarily use the word moratorium, but that is what you're asking for. You're asking for a moratorium, and you have to be very clear on what you're asking for. If you're asking for a 30-day moratorium, tell them. If you're asking for a moratorium on a payment that's already late and you plan to make the next payment that's coming up in 2 weeks, tell them that. If you're asking for a moratorium on the payment that's already late and you want to forego or skip the payment that's due in 2 weeks and the payment that's coming up after that, but you know with an absolute certainty you'll be able to make the next payment, tell them that. But make sure that you're explaining to them, I'm not saying that I'm already late on this payment. I want to be late on the next payment, and then I'm going to catch up on the payment after that. That means you're making 3 payments at one time. Make sure that you're crystal clear on the fact that what you're asking for is a moratorium where the payment is not considered due or late, and that they agree that they're going to tack that payment on to the back end of the loan. If you have 1 year left in the term of loan payments, it's now going to be 1 year and 1 month if you get a 1 month moratorium. I hope I've made that clear. But anyway, that's what a moratorium is. And that's basically the way that you go about borrowing money from your existing creditors. Now, I'm going to include some telephone numbers for some companies that basically assist consumers with credit issues. And you may want to contact them because they don't deal with moratorium. They do deal with credit repair, credit restoration, and that type of thing. And if the issues are related to your credit, you might want to call either of the companies I'm going to post a link to or a listing for or telephone number for on this video.